I've noticed people without a hobby see life as meaningless, don't believe in themselves, and go a bit crazy when they have free time. In this video, I'm going to talk about why you need a hobby and how to pick one. But what's so bad about not having a hobby, you say? 2,000 years ago, Aristotle, a Greek philosopher who literally invented logic, said, "Happiness does not lie in leisure, but in virtuous activities." This was more recently phrased as, "Idle hands, or minds, are the devil's workshop." It sounds authoritarian, but really it's a warning for you that if you don't give yourself something useful to do, you will default to the easiest and probably the least meaningful. I don't know who said that, but Arnold Bennett would agree. Bennett is an important character in our story. In 40 years, he wrote 34 novels, 7 volumes of short stories, and 13 plays. That's pretty epic as writing goes, but why it's relevant to our story is that he was around when a big change happened. You know the 9 to 5? Could you imagine a life unlike it? Well, it was around Bennett's time when this became the norm. Being able to contrast between the two, he noticed that a typical man was making a grave mistake. Bennett saw that the typical man did not enjoy his job, but considered the 8 hours working as the day, and the other 16 hours on either side of it as mere prologues or epilogues to the day. Bennett argued that it was within those 16 hours that the day really was, because that was when you are free. You might think that your free time can be anything. It's free, right? But it cannot and should not. I'm not saying you need to fill every spare moment with doing stuff, because being bored is valuable. But are you really doing nothing? In my 30 years of being alive, I've only met one person who I've seen do nothing. My late grandmother, Baba Pepper. She would sit out in the garden on summer evenings and just simply enjoy the warm air. I don't blame you. You've not given yourself a quality alternative. We're going to address how to find an alternative, but first, why should you? Having a hobby keeps you sane by giving your mind something which you consider meaningful to digest over. It provides you with a community from others who are also interested in it. Community, by the way, is one of the key factors in living a long life. As you work on your hobby, you're going to develop ability, which will give you confidence. And last but not least, as Aristotle would approve, having a hobby saves you from non-virtuous activities, thoughts, and doubts. You might have had some dark thoughts in your life, and that's normal. But where it's easy to go wrong is to dwell on them. And we dwell on them because we're giving ourselves nothing better to work on. I've already got a hobby, I hear you say. I cannot discredit what you think a hobby might be, but I can challenge your idea on what makes a good hobby. Let me explain. Until making this very video, I've always thought that playing video games were one of my hobbies. Turns out, it's not a good one. It's hard for me to accept. I've been gaming since I can remember, playing Doom, the 1993 version, in someone's office at one of the few computers in my town in Bulgaria. How can we distinguish from a good hobby to a not good hobby? I've created a criteria for separating good hobbies from bad ones. To be clear, I'm not saying activities which don't fit this cannot be hobbies. I'm just saying that they're not the best things to consider as hobbies. The 7-step criteria is fun, meaningful, there is no roof, which means there's nothing that's going to limit you on how good you can get at this hobby. Progress is apparent, and the progression in your ability is clear. There is community and other people interested in this hobby. Regularity. You can afford to be consistent with this hobby. For example, if your hobby is climbing the Alps, but you live in South America and you cannot visit the Alps regularly, you can't be regular. And the last one is the deal breaker for most. You must be a creator rather than a consumer. Where video games fail for me is that there is a roof on how good I can get. Progress isn't apparent from game to game, especially different genres. And lastly, when I'm playing a game, I'm a consumer rather than a creator. But actually, it's easy to change. If instead of playing video games, my hobby became writing, reviewing, or making video games, my new hobby would fill all 8 criteria. Does your hobby fit this criteria? Let me know in the comments. If it doesn't, the good news is you probably don't have to look far to find a better hobby. Look for common threads on your old hard drive, on your feed. Are there topics you often post about? What old objects do you have lying around the house? Is there a topic you have spent disproportionately more money on compared to your friends? Do you have a lot of books on the same subject? Is there anything that makes you feel so good you would consider volunteering in it? Or the ultimate test. If you were stranded on a desert island for 48 hours only, with all your comforts and essentials provided, what's the one thing that you would bring? All of this sounds like a lot of work. But the surprising thing is, this work gives much more than it takes. One of my core philosophies is use it or lose it. The idea behind this is that our brains and bodies are the most adaptable things in the world. But the flip side is that they thirst for challenge. John Coltrane, one of the most influential figures in jazz, phrased it in the following way. The real risk is in not changing. I have to feel that I'm after something. If I make money, fine, but I'd rather be striving. It's striving, man. It's that I want. Once you've locked onto a good hobby, you'll give yourself a quality alternative to the addictive and meaningless pull of easy entertainment. You might even experience, maybe for the first time in your life, what it means to live and not just exist. Hi, I'm Martin, the man behind this channel. I hope you found the video useful. If you're struggling to find time for your newfound hobby, then I recommend you check out my last video where I talked about the idea of a minimalist phone launcher. Similar content available on my website. I'll see you in the next one.